What if I told you that some secrets are better left buried? Tonight, we're exploring a real-life horror story that will make you question everything you thought you knew. Welcome back to the Horror Shack. As we uncover this chilling tale, I want to hear from you. Comment below about the moment that scared you the most. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on more spine-tingling horror stories like this one. If you enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps us grow this chilling community. Now, let's step into the shadows. Now, let's begin the story. You ever have one of those nights that just feels off? I can't explain it, but that's how last Halloween felt for me. It started like any other. The neighborhood was alive. Kids running around in costumes, jack-o'-lanterns glowing on every doorstep, the smell of caramel apples in the air. You could feel the excitement building, you know? Everyone looked forward to the big party at the old community center every year. And this time, we were going to make it the best one yet. The plan was pretty simple. Go to the party, drink a little, and maybe check out that old Victorian house on the edge of town afterward. You probably heard about it. The one where the whole family just up and vanished without a trace. We'd all heard the stories growing up. Some people said they moved away. Others thought something worse happened. Either way, the house had been empty for as long as I could remember, and every Halloween some idiot dared someone to go inside. This year, it was our turn to be those idiots. There were 5 of us. Me, Josh, Sarah, Eric, and Megan. We've been friends since forever, so doing stupid stuff together wasn't exactly out of character. Josh was the one who came up with the idea to explore the house after the party. He'd always been obsessed with urban legends and creepy stories, and honestly, it was hard to say no to him. Sarah wasn't too thrilled about it, but she came along because she didn't want to be the only one staying behind. Megan and Eric, well, they were just in it for the laughs. We hit the party around 8 p.m., and everything was great at first. The music was loud, people were in full costume, and there were snacks everywhere. I remember Sarah trying to steal a candy apple and almost getting caught. Josh, meanwhile, kept bringing up the house. He had this weird excitement about it, like he couldn't wait to get there. It's just an empty building, Megan kept saying, but Josh wasn't buying it. He swore there was something more to the story, something nobody talked about. I should have known then that something was off. It wasn't just Josh's obsession. There was this feeling in the air, like everyone at the party was having fun, but beneath it, something felt strange. It's hard to explain without sounding crazy, but it felt like we were waiting for something to happen, even though we didn't know what it was. By 11 p.m., we were bored with the party. The crowd had started thinning out, and someone spilled beer all over Eric's costume. That's when Josh brought it up again. "Let's go to the house," he said. No hesitation. Just like that, the night took a turn. I remember looking at Megan and Sarah. They weren't exactly excited, but nobody backed out. So, we grabbed our jackets, slipped out the back door, and headed toward the edge of town. The house wasn't far, maybe a 15-minute walk from the community center. But the further we got from the lights and music, the quieter everything became. It was weird, because even though it was still Halloween night, the streets felt deserted. No kids, no decorations, just silence. It was like we crossed some invisible line where the fun stopped, and the world just held its breath. When we reached the house, it looked exactly how you'd expect. Old, falling apart, covered in ivy. The front gate was hanging off its hinges, and the windows were boarded up. It wasn't the kind of place you'd want to be in during the day, let alone at night. But there we were, standing outside, staring at it like a bunch of idiots. "You guys ready?" Josh asked, like we had any choice. We climbed the porch steps, and the wood groaned under our weight. I swear, I felt the air change the moment we stepped onto the porch. It wasn't colder or anything, just different. Like we didn't belong there, and the house knew it. Eric gave the front door a shove, and to our surprise, it creaked open like it had been waiting for us. Inside, it smelled like dust and old wood. The kind of smell that clings to your clothes and makes you want to sneeze. The hallway was dark, and we could barely make out the shapes of old furniture under sheets. Josh pulled out his phone to use as a flashlight, and we started making our way through the house. At first, it was kind of funny. Eric and Megan kept whispering boo and trying to scare each other, and even Sarah started to relax a little. But then we noticed the symbols. They were scratched into the walls, tiny little shapes that looked like they meant something, but none of us knew what. Some of them were drawn in circles, others in long, jagged lines. They were everywhere, on the walls, the doors, even the ceiling. Creepy, Sarah muttered, tracing one of the symbols with her finger. Wonder what they mean. Probably just graffiti, Megan said, but she didn't sound convinced. None of us were. We kept going deeper into the house. Every room we entered felt the same. Empty, dusty, and covered in those weird symbols. But the further we went, the more uneasy I felt. It was like the air got heavier, like something was pressing down on my chest. I could tell the others felt it too, even if nobody said anything. Then we started hearing things. At first, it was just little noises, like the creak of a floorboard or the sound of wind rattling the windows. But then we heard footsteps. Not ours, something else. Something moving upstairs, slow and deliberate. We froze. For a moment, nobody moved or said a word. We just stood there, staring up at the ceiling, listening to those slow, heavy footsteps above us. Probably just an animal, Eric whispered, but he didn't sound too sure. Yeah, Josh agreed. Probably, but he kept the flashlight aimed at the staircase, like he was waiting for something to come down. I can't explain why, but we didn't leave. We should have just turned around and walked out the way we came, but something kept us there. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe we just didn't want to admit we were scared. Either way, we stayed, and that's when things started getting really weird. Josh was the first to make a move. Let's just check upstairs real quick, he said, already halfway to the staircase. I wanted to tell him it was a bad idea, but the words got stuck in my throat. It felt like if I said something, I'd break the silence, and whatever was upstairs would know we were there. Josh reached the top of the stairs and shined his phone's light down the hallway. It's just empty, he called out. Come on, guys. Nothing to be scared of. One by one, we followed him up, each step creaking louder than the last. The hallway was long, with doorways leading off into pitch-black rooms. I noticed the symbols again. More of them scratched into the walls like someone had been in a hurry. They seemed messier than the ones downstairs, like whoever made them was desperate to get them finished. We stepped into the first room on the right. It was empty except for an old bed frame pushed against the wall. Josh walked over to the window and peeked outside. You can see the whole town from here, he said, sounding almost impressed. I walked over and stood next to him, looking down at the quiet streets. From up there, the town looked different. The streetlights flickered, and shadows stretched across the road in ways that didn't make sense. For a moment, it felt like the whole town was holding its breath, waiting for something. Okay, we've seen the view, Megan said nervously from the doorway. Can we go now? Josh ignored her and moved to the closet. The door was slightly ajar, and he nudged it open with his foot. Inside were a few old clothes, coats, mostly, and a shoebox on the top shelf. What's in there? Sarah asked, leaning in closer. Josh grabbed the box and set it on the floor. He opened the lid, and inside were a bunch of photographs. They were old, black and white, and kind of blurry. At first, they looked like normal family photos. Kids playing in the yard, a couple smiling on the porch, that kind of thing. But as Josh flipped through them, the photos got strange. There was one of the family sitting around a dining table, but all their faces were blurred out. In another, the kids were standing in front of the house, but their shadows didn't match their bodies. "Okay, this is creepy," Megan whispered, stepping back. Then Josh pulled out the last photo. It was a picture of the house. This house, but the windows were all blacked out. And in the doorway stood 5 figures. They were blurry, but I swear to God, they looked exactly like us. "Okay, we're done," Sarah said, her voice shaky. "We need to leave. Now." Josh was still staring at the photo, his face pale. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. "How could this be here?" None of us had an answer, and none of us wanted to stick around to find out. We hurried out of the room and back into the hallway, but something was different. The air felt thicker, like it was harder to breathe, and the house seemed darker somehow, even with our phone lights. "Guys, where's the staircase?" Eric asked suddenly, spinning in circles. We stopped and looked around. The hallway was longer than I remembered, and the stairs were gone. In their place was just more hallway, stretching off into the darkness. This isn't right," Megan whispered. "The stairs were right here. We just came up them. We need to stay calm," Josh said, though he didn't sound calm at all. "Let's just keep walking. We'll find them." So we walked down the hallway, through doorways that should have led back to the rooms we just left, but instead opened into more hallways. It was like the house was shifting around us, changing every time we turned a corner. And that's when we heard the whispers. They weren't loud, just soft, almost like someone talking in another room. But they were close. Too close. "What the hell is that?" Eric whispered, his eyes wide. Nobody answered. We just kept walking, moving faster now, trying to outrun the sound. But the whispers followed us, growing louder with every step. Then we saw them, shadows moving at the end of the hallway. They flickered in and out of sight, just beyond the reach of our lights. "We need to go," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. We broke into a run, but no matter how fast we went, the hallway never seemed to end. It just kept going, the walls closing in around us, the whispers growing louder and louder until it felt like they were inside our heads. And then everything stopped. The hallway ended abruptly, and we found ourselves standing in front of a single door. It was old, with peeling paint and a rusted doorknob. "Do we open it?" Josh asked, his hand hovering over the knob. "Do we have a choice?" Megan shot back, her voice tight with fear. Josh turned the knob and pushed the door open. Inside was a small room, empty except for a single photograph hanging on the wall. It was the same photo from the shoebox, the one of the house with 5 figures in the doorway. But this time, the figures weren't blurry. They were us. Josh took a step back, his face drained of all color. This isn't possible," he whispered. None of us moved. It was like our bodies were frozen in place, our minds scrambling to make sense of what we were seeing. Sarah was the first to snap out of it. "We need to leave. Now," she said, yanking at Josh's arm. But the second she said it, the door behind us slammed shut with a deafening bang. The sound echoed through the room, making my heart jump into my throat. I spun around and tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. We were locked in. Okay, let's not panic," Josh muttered, pacing in circles. "There's got to be a way out. Houses don't just lock you in, right?" His voice cracked at the end, betraying his fear. Megan pressed her ear to the door as if she expected to hear someone on the other side. "There's no one here. It's just us." "Yeah," Eric snapped. "Then how do you explain that?" He pointed back to the photo on the wall. The figures us in the photograph had moved, They weren't standing in the doorway anymore. Now, they were inside the house, standing in what looked like the very room we were in, facing the door. Josh stumbled backward, almost tripping over his own feet. What the hell? What the hell is going on? The whispers returned, louder this time, circling the room like a storm. They weren't just random noises anymore. They were saying things. It sounded like our names, repeated over and over, but twisted somehow, as if the house was trying to mimic our voices. Josh, Megan, Eric. The words dragged like nails on a chalkboard, sending chills down my spine. I'm done with this, Sarah shouted, running toward the wall. She grabbed the photo and yanked it off, hoping it would do something. But the second she did, the lights from our phones flickered and died, plunging us into complete darkness. Turn them back on, Megan cried. I'm trying, I said, pressing every button, but the screen stayed black. Eric's phone was dead too, and so was Josh's. It was like the house had drained the power from them. The room grew colder, and I swear I could feel something breathing right next to me, though no one was there. My heart pounded against my ribs, each beat louder than the last. Then we heard it, a soft scraping sound like something dragging across the floor. It was faint at first, but it was getting closer. Who's there? I called out, my voice cracking with fear. The sound stopped for a moment, only to start up again, this time directly behind us. We spun around, and there, in the darkness, we saw the faint outline of a figure standing just inches away. Megan let out a sharp gasp, and Josh grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. We could barely see it, but the shape was tall and wrong. It looked human, but its head tilted at an unnatural angle, and its arms seemed longer than they should have been. Don't move, I whispered, even though every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. For what felt like an eternity, none of us moved. The figure just stood there, breathing slowly like it was waiting for us to do something. Then, without warning, it lunged. Chaos erupted. We scattered, stumbling over each other in the darkness, trying to escape. Someone, maybe Eric, screamed, and I heard the thud of bodies hitting walls. I ran, my hands outstretched, searching for a door, a window, anything. My heart was racing so fast I thought it might explode. And then, miraculously, I found a door. I threw it open without thinking and tumbled into another room. I expected the others to follow, but when I looked back, I was alone. Guys, I called out, my voice trembling. There was no response, just silence, thick and suffocating. I tried to open the door again, but now it wouldn't budge. Panic welled up in my chest. I banged on the wood, screaming for Josh, for Megan, for anyone, but it was like the house had swallowed them whole. The room I was in was small, with just one window. I ran to it, hoping to see the street outside, maybe spot someone who could help, but what I saw made my blood run cold. It wasn't the street outside. It was the same room I was standing in. The same window, the same walls, the same door. It was like the house had folded in on itself, trapping me in some kind of twisted loop. And then I saw something else in the reflection, something standing right behind me. I turned slowly, dread settling in my stomach like a stone. There it was again, the same figure from before, now mere inches away, its breath hot against my neck. My heart thundered in my ears, drowning out all other sounds. I backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The walls closed in like a vice. The figure was no longer just a shadow. It was a woman, her face pale and gaunt, eyes wide with an expression of torment that sent ice coursing through my veins. She wore a long, tattered dress that seemed to flow like mist around her, blending into the shadows. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. It was hauntingly familiar. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, though I knew I didn't want the answer. "I need you to find them," she continued, her gaze piercing into mine. "You have to help them before it's too late." My mind raced. Was this some kind of trick? Was she one of the spirits that had trapped us here? But her voice was filled with genuine desperation, and I felt compelled to listen. "Where are they?" I asked, my voice shaky. "You must unlock the truth," she said, her eyes darting towards the door I had just come through. "You're close. They're close. But time is running out." Suddenly, the room began to spin, the walls warping as if the house itself were alive, pulsating with anger. The woman's face twisted in fear, and she reached out to me, her fingers brushing my arm. "They are coming for you," she screamed, just as the door burst open, slamming against the wall with a force that rattled the floor. Josh stumbled into the room, his face pale and wild, with Megan right behind him. "We thought we lost you," he gasped, panting heavily. The woman vanished the moment they entered, leaving only a faint echo of her words in the air. "Did you see her?" I asked breathlessly, but both Josh and Megan shook their heads. "What are you talking about?" Josh looked confused. "There's nothing here. I swear. She was right here. She said we have to find the others." I gestured wildly, trying to make sense of it all. "Find who?" Megan asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "The family. The woman said we have to unlock the truth." "Forget the truth. We need to find a way out," Josh shouted, frustration creeping into his voice. "We're trapped in this nightmare, and I don't want to spend another second in this house." The urgency in his tone snapped me back to reality. We had to get out, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more we needed to uncover. I glanced at the door we had just come through. What if we go back the way we came? Maybe we missed something. "Are you crazy?" Megan said. "What if that thing is still there?" "It's worth the risk," I replied, steeling myself. "We can't just sit here and wait to become part of this place." Josh hesitated, but eventually nodded, and we all moved back towards the door. Each step felt heavier than the last, like the air was thickening around us. When we reached the threshold, I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. It creaked eerily as it swung wide, revealing the dimly lit hallway beyond. We stepped out cautiously, the darkness pressing in on all sides. The whispers were back, swirling like a fog around us, echoing with our names and snatches of laughter. Laughter that sounded far too familiar. "Listen," I said, tilting my head. "Do you hear that?" Megan nodded slowly, her eyes wide. "It sounds like kids." We moved further down the hall, the laughter growing louder. It was a cruel, mocking sound, filled with an unsettling joy. We followed it, hoping it would lead us to the source, maybe even to a way out. As we walked, the walls seemed to pulse with life, shadows dancing just out of our sight. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath misting in front of me. "Something feels wrong," Josh said, glancing over his shoulder. "Are you sure we should be doing this?" "We have to find them," I insisted. "We can't leave them behind." We finally reached a room at the end of the hallway. The laughter was deafening now, almost overwhelming. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was a children's playroom, though it looked decades old. Toys lay scattered across the floor, dust collecting on forgotten dolls and wooden trains. The walls were painted bright colors, but they were chipped and faded, as if the happiness once held here had been drained away. In the center of the room was a small table, and on it lay a collection of old photographs. I recognized the family immediately, the parents, the children. They looked so happy, but that happiness felt like a distant memory. As I picked up one of the photos, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. The laughter stopped abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence. "Do you see this?" I said, showing the photo to Josh and Megan. "This is them." The moment I spoke, a chill swept through the room and shadows flickered around us. I felt the weight of their despair pressing down on me. "Look," Megan said, pointing to a toy in the corner. "Is that?" I turned to see what she was pointing at, a ragged stuffed bear, its button eyes gleaming in the dim light. It was sitting upright, looking directly at us. "Why is it just sitting there?" Josh asked, his voice trembling. Before I could respond, the bear's mouth opened, and a child's voice came from it. "Help us! Help us!" The voice was innocent, yet filled with an unsettling urgency that sent chills down my spine. I blinked in disbelief, trying to process what was happening. This wasn't right. Toys didn't talk. The bear's button eyes seemed to sparkle with a life of their own, as if it had been waiting for us. "What do you mean?" I asked hesitantly, stepping closer. I felt a strong pull to understand what this bear wanted, but a part of me screamed to run. "They took us," it said again, the voice trembling, filled with a childlike fear. "You have to find them." My heart raced. "Who took you?" I demanded, desperation creeping into my voice. The bear's mouth moved, but no words came out this time. Instead, a wave of memories washed over me, images flashing in my mind like a slideshow. I saw the family, the parents and their 2 children, laughing as they carved pumpkins in the yard, a golden retriever barking happily beside them. Then the scene shifted, the sky darkened, and I saw a shadowy figure lurking in the woods behind their house, watching them with a predatory gaze. Suddenly, everything shifted again. The family was in the house, the laughter replaced with screams, the lights flickering erratically as the figure crept closer. My breath hitched as I realized this was not just a story. It was a warning. The figure was here, in this house, and we had unknowingly walked into its trap. "Stop!" I shouted, pulling back from the bear as the visions faded. "I can't take this." Megan grasped my arm. "We need to leave. Now." Josh nodded vigorously, his face pale. "Let's get out of here before it's too late." But before we could move, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang, shaking the walls. The sound echoed in the room, followed by a heavy silence that felt suffocating. "Let us out!" I yelled, pounding on the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me as I turned back to the bear, hoping it would provide some clarity. "Why are you doing this?" I cried out. "What do you want from us?" The bear's expression remained unchanged, but a soft light began to emanate from it, illuminating the room. The walls pulsed rhythmically, and suddenly, the photographs on the table began to glow. "You must remember," the bear said, its voice echoing around us. "You must remember what happened." The photos shifted, showing more moments from the family's life, but now they revealed secrets long hidden. I watched as the parents fought, the tension thick in the air, arguments echoing in my mind. Then the children's faces turned fearful, haunted by something that felt much darker than mere family strife. In the last photo, I saw the family standing outside the house, the shadowy figure lurking just behind them, its elongated limbs reaching out as if trying to pull them back. The image froze, trapping them in a moment that felt like it was alive. They are lost because they forgot. the bear said softly, the light brightening. Help them remember. Help them escape. I felt a rush of understanding wash over me. This wasn't just about the family. It was about us too. We were trapped in the same cycle of fear, unable to move forward unless we faced the darkness that bound us. What do we need to do? I asked, urgency filling my voice. How can we help them? The bear's eyes glowed fiercely, and in that moment, it seemed to understand everything. Find the truth hidden in this house. Remember what was lost. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, and the walls trembled, the shadows closing in around us. I could feel the temperature drop, an icy breath creeping in from the corners of the room. Don't let it take you, the bear warned, its voice trembling. Guys, we have to figure this out, I said, my mind racing. The truth must be in the house somewhere, something that explains everything. Okay, Josh said, his voice steadier now. But where do we even start? Let's check the other rooms, Megan suggested. We got to find something, anything that can help. We pushed against the door, and it creaked open slowly, revealing the dark hallway beyond. The air felt thick, charged with anticipation, as we moved out into the corridor. We began searching each room, our footsteps echoing ominously in the stillness. Each door we opened revealed relics of the past. Old clothes, broken toys, and fragments of lives lived long ago. In one room, I found a dusty diary sitting on a dresser. I opened it, the pages crumbling beneath my fingers. The entries were filled with mundane details of family life, but soon turned darker. The shadows grow closer. I can feel their presence. One entry read, "The children have begun to see things, and I worry for their safety." As I read, a cold shiver ran down my spine. It was as if the writer was reaching out from the past, pleading for someone to listen. "We have to keep looking," I said, my heart pounding. "There has to be something more." We combed through the house, moving from room to room, uncovering bits and pieces of the family's life. Finally, we reached the basement door, which was slightly ajar, the air around it heavy with dread. "Do you think we should go down there?" Megan asked, hesitating. "It might be our only option," I replied, glancing at Josh. If the family vanished, they might have gone down there. Together, we descended the creaking stairs, the air growing colder with each step. The basement was dimly lit, the shadows creeping closer as we reached the bottom. It was a small room, cluttered with old furniture and boxes. I scanned the area, and my eyes landed on a large, locked trunk in the corner. "Let's check that," I said, moving toward it. Josh stepped forward, glancing around nervously. "Are you sure? What if it's something we shouldn't see?" "We won't know unless we try," I replied, kneeling before the trunk. The lock was rusted, but I could see it was old. With a little force, I pried it open, the lid creaking as I lifted it. Inside were various items: old letters, toys, and photographs. I pulled out a letter, my hands trembling as I opened it. "If you're reading this," it began, "then we have failed. The darkness has come for us, and we are trapped. Do not let it take you. Remember the love we shared, and hold on to it." The message struck me hard, the fear in the writer's words echoing in my mind. The love they spoke of felt tangible, a lifeline in the abyss that surrounded us. Suddenly, the shadows in the room thickened, coiling around us like tendrils of smoke. I glanced at Josh and Megan, and we all felt it, the oppressive weight of the darkness creeping closer. "We need to hurry," I said, stuffing the letter back into the trunk. There's got to be a way to stop this. As I turned to leave the basement, I felt a cold breeze sweep past me, causing the hair on the back of my neck to stand up. It was almost like a whisper echoing through the darkness. Remember, remember. The shadows shifted, coalescing into a more defined shape, something I could only describe as a vague figure, like the silhouette of a person. "Get back!" Josh shouted, pushing Megan behind him. I felt the dread pooling in my stomach as the figure solidified, revealing the face of a child, eyes hollow and pleading. "Help us!" it echoed, repeating the same words. The realization hit me like a punch. These were the children from the family. They were trapped here, just like us, caught in an endless cycle of fear and despair. "What do we do?" Megan cried, her voice trembling. "Remember," the child echoed again. And in that moment, I knew we had to confront whatever this was head on. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to step forward. "We will help you. We promise." The child's face softened, a glimmer of hope shining through its haunting expression. "You must remember the truth." And just like that, the basement began to shake, the walls rattling as if the house itself were angry. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Megan and pulling Josh along as we dashed for the stairs. As we climbed, the darkness clawed at our heels, whispering threats, desperate cries blending into one cacophony of terror. We burst through the door, slamming it shut behind us. "We can't stop," I panted, still gripping their hands tightly. "We need to keep moving." We raced down the hall, the shadows chasing us, swirling like a storm. We had to find a way to confront the truth, to break the cycle before it consumed us. "Where do we go?" "Josh, where do we go?" Josh asked, his voice shaky as we reached the end of the hallway. The oppressive darkness lingered behind us, echoing with whispers that twisted my stomach into knots. "I don't know," I yelled, glancing back at the shadowy mass gathering at the end of the corridor. "But we can't stay here." The only door left was the one leading to the attic. It loomed ahead, almost mocking us with its creaking frame. "We have to check there. Maybe it leads outside," I said, adrenaline pushing me forward. With no time to waste, I swung the door open, and we stumbled inside, the musty air filling our lungs. The attic was dim, cluttered with dust-covered furniture and old boxes. The atmosphere felt thick, like the air before a storm. "Look," Megan shouted, pointing to a small window at the far end of the attic. A sliver of moonlight illuminated the dust particles dancing in the air, creating a hauntingly beautiful sight amidst the chaos. "If we can get to that window, we might be able to escape. Let's move," I urged, sprinting toward the window. The attic creaked under our weight, and I could feel the house tremble as if it were alive, angry at our intrusion. As we reached the window, I noticed a wooden beam running across the top, just out of reach. "We'll have to boost each other up," I suggested, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I'll go first." I climbed onto a nearby crate, straining to reach the beam. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices blending together, filled with anger and despair. I could feel the shadows closing in, curling around my legs like snakes. "Come on, hurry," Josh shouted, panic rising in his voice. With a final push, I grabbed the beam, hoisting myself up. My heart raced as I glanced down at my friends. "Okay, Megan, you go next." Megan quickly scrambled up, her eyes wide with fear. She reached for the beam and managed to pull herself up. "I can almost reach the window," she exclaimed. "Josh, you can do this." I called out, trying to instill some courage in him. He nodded, determination flickering in his eyes as he climbed onto the crate. Just then, the attic door slammed shut with a loud bang, rattling the entire space. The shadows poured in, swirling around us like a thick fog. "Get out! Now!" I yelled, but Josh hesitated, terror painted across his face. "Don't look back," I instructed, my heart pounding as the whispers morphed into shouts, each one more desperate than the last. "You have to trust us." With renewed urgency, Josh jumped up, grabbing the beam just as the shadows brushed against him. He swung his legs up, and I felt a surge of hope as he hoisted himself toward us. "We're almost there," Megan yelled, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and fear. As Josh pulled himself up, the shadows lunged at him, grabbing his ankles. "No!" I shouted, reaching for him. I could see the fear in his eyes, the realization that he might be lost to this darkness. "Help!" he cried, struggling against the pull of the shadows. In a desperate move, I lunged forward, grabbing Josh's arm and pulling with all my strength. "Hold on!" With a powerful yank, I managed to pull him up just as the shadows clawed at him, their whispers drowning out his cries. The darkness recoiled momentarily, and I felt a surge of strength. "Now, Megan, push!" I yelled, my voice echoing with urgency. Megan reached for the window, her fingers brushing against the glass. "I can't. It's stuck. Use your feet," I yelled, urgency surging through me. "Push against the frame." With a determined scream, she kicked at the window, and with a loud shatter, it broke free, the glass cascading down like rain. "Jump! Now!" I yelled, looking back at the shadows, which were now swirling violently, enraged at our escape. Megan climbed through first, and I felt a rush of relief wash over me as she landed safely outside. "I'm okay," she shouted, looking up at us. "Josh, it's your turn," I urged, glancing back at the shadows. They were closing in, their whispers growing louder, more frantic. "Go! I'll help him," I told Megan, preparing to grab Josh again. "Just go!" Josh shouted, his voice laced with fear. "You have to save yourself?" "No, we're leaving together," I insisted, grabbing his arms tightly. The shadows writhed, stretching toward us, the air growing heavier with every passing second. "Don't let them take you," Josh cried, his grip slipping. With one final surge of adrenaline, I pulled him toward the window. We're going now." I felt the cold fingers of the shadows brush against my back as we both lunged for the opening. With a burst of strength, I shoved Josh through, and he tumbled out onto the grass below. "Now!" he shouted, and I followed, pushing myself through the broken glass, the shards biting into my skin as I hit the ground hard. We landed in a heap on the grass, gasping for air, the cool night air washing over us like a cleansing wave. I quickly scrambled to my feet, looking back at the house. The shadows were swirling violently, howling in fury as they struggled against the barrier of light that surrounded us. "We did it!" I shouted, but my voice trembled with uncertainty. "Let's get out of here," Megan urged, her eyes wide with terror. We ran, sprinting away from the house, the laughter of children and the festive atmosphere of Halloween beckoning us back. But as we turned to look one last time, I saw the silhouette of the child standing in the window, watching us with hollow eyes. "Help us," it mouthed, and a shiver ran down my spine. Ignoring the pleading gaze, we bolted down the street. the laughter of other kids ringing in our ears, drowning out the dark whispers that clung to our minds. We finally reached the community center, our hearts racing as we burst through the doors. Inside, people were dancing and celebrating, completely unaware of the horror we had just escaped. "Are you guys okay?" a friend asked, looking concerned as she noticed our disheveled appearance. We went to the old house," I stammered, struggling to catch my breath. "It's haunted. We need to tell someone." But as I looked around at the happy faces, I felt a growing sense of dread. "They won't believe us," I whispered to myself. "We need to warn them," Megan insisted, her voice shaking. "What if more people go there?" We quickly found a group of friends, relaying the events of the night, trying to explain the danger we had faced. But they laughed, thinking it was just a Halloween prank, a story to scare the little kids. "No, it's real," Josh shouted, but no one listened. Suddenly, the music cut off, and the lights flickered ominously. A hushed silence fell over the crowd as everyone turned toward the main entrance. And that's when we saw it. Shadowy figures creeping in through the doors, their forms shifting and swirling, the whispers rising once more. "What the hell?" someone exclaimed, taking a step back. Panic erupted as people scrambled to get away, but it was too late. The shadows surged forward, engulfing the crowd in darkness. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Megan's hand and pulling her toward the exit. We fought our way through the chaos, the whispers growing louder, drowning out the screams of our friends. The figures reached out, trying to pull people back into the night. "No, we won't let them take us," I yelled, adrenaline surging through my veins. Megan stumbled, falling to her knees. "I can't breathe," she gasped, the darkness wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. I turned back, desperation flooding my mind. "Megan, get up. We have to go." But before I could reach her, the shadows enveloped her completely, pulling her into the void. "No!" I screamed, lunging forward, but it was too late. The darkness surged around me, pulling me back as I struggled against it. I could feel the whispers closing in, wrapping around me like chains. I fought and fought, desperate to break free, but it was no use. In that moment, I understood the truth. The family hadn't just vanished. They had become part of the house, trapped in a cycle of despair, just like us. And then I was lost. The darkness swallowed me whole, and everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back in the attic, surrounded by the dusty old boxes. The air felt heavy, and a familiar chill ran down my spine as I turned, realizing I was alone. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing in the silence. Nothing answered. My heart raced as I remembered the events of the night before. The laughter, the darkness, Megan's screams. I blinked, trying to shake off the confusion. I was in the attic of the old house, but how? I pushed myself up, feeling the cold wooden floor beneath me. A strange sense of déjà vu washed over me. The shadows loomed in the corners, whispering my name, beckoning me closer. "Where is everyone?" I muttered, panic creeping in. I crawled toward the window, the beam still above me. But this time it felt different, heavier, darker. I reached out, grasping the edge of the window frame. Peering outside, I saw nothing but a swirling mist. The world I had known felt distant, as if it existed in another reality. "No!" I shouted, pulling back from the window. I was trapped here. The memories flooded my mind. Josh, Megan, our escape attempts, and the shadows that had taken them. In the silence, I heard the whispers again, more insistent now, crawling into my mind like a thick fog. They spoke of despair, of darkness, of children who had been lost in the shadows. I stood up, trembling, and scanned the attic for something, anything, that could help me escape this nightmare. My eyes fell upon an old trunk in the corner, covered in dust and cobwebs. I stumbled toward it, my heart racing. The trunk creaked open, revealing a collection of old toys, faded photographs, and letters. I rifled through them, searching for a clue, a way out. One photograph caught my attention, a group of children standing in front of the house, smiling and carefree, but behind them, the shadows loomed ominously. "This can't be happening," I whispered, feeling the cold fingers of dread wrap around my throat. Then I saw it, a letter at the bottom of the trunk, yellowed with age. I pulled it out, trembling as I unfolded it. "Dear listener, if you find this, know that the house is not merely a structure. It is a living entity, feeding on the memories of those who enter. The darkness is not just a shadow. It is the pain of those who have been trapped here, seeking release. You must confront it, or you will become part of its story. To escape, you must face the truth of what happened here. The past cannot be forgotten. It must be confronted. Only then can you break the cycle and free the others." The words blurred as tears welled in my eyes. I couldn't let them down. I had to find a way to confront the shadows, to save Megan and Josh if there was still time. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from downstairs, snapping me back to reality. I felt the urgency in my bones. I had to act quickly. Without a second thought, I sprinted toward the attic door and flung it open. The hallway was dim, shadows shifting along the walls, but I couldn't hesitate. I dashed down the stairs, each step echoing like a drumbeat in my ears. As I reached the bottom, I found myself in the living room, the atmosphere thick with darkness. The shadows swirled around me, whispering in a language I couldn't understand, wrapping around my ankles like vines. "Let them go," I shouted, the words pouring out of me like a spell. "You have no power over us." The whispers grew louder, turning into anguished wails as the shadows surged forward, stretching toward me. But I stood my ground, fueled by the determination to save my friends. "Your pain ends here," I yelled, raising my hands as if to push them away. The shadows recoiled momentarily, and I seized the opportunity to move forward, feeling a warmth radiate from my core. Suddenly, the room erupted with light, blindingly bright, forcing the shadows to retreat. I squinted against the glare, and in that moment, I caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye. "Megan! Josh!" I called out, my voice cracking as I scanned the room. There they were, huddled together, their eyes wide with fear. But they were alive. The shadows writhed around them, but I could see the light breaking through the darkness. "Help us!" Megan cried, reaching out. With newfound strength, I dashed toward them, feeling the warmth intensify as I approached. "Hold on, I'm coming." As I reached for them, the shadows lashed out, but I pushed through the fear, focusing on the light inside me. "You can't have them," I screamed, pulling them close. "Together," Josh shouted, his eyes filled with determination. "We can break free." And just like that, we joined hands, forming a circle of light against the encroaching darkness. The shadows shrieked in fury, twisting and writhing, but they couldn't break through our bond. The light expanded, washing over the room and illuminating every corner. The whispers turned to screams, echoing as they recoiled from the force we had created. Now, we pushed back. I yelled, and we focused our energy, directing it toward the heart of the darkness. With a blinding flash, the light erupted, engulfing the room, and for a moment, everything went silent. Then came the sound of shattering glass. The walls trembled, and I felt the darkness peel away like a layer of skin. When the light faded, we stood in a circle of brightness, the shadows retreating to the corners of the room, their whispers growing faint. "We did it!" Megan shouted, tears streaming down her face. "We're free," Josh added, his voice filled with disbelief. But just as I began to feel a sense of victory, I noticed something. On the wall behind us, a dark silhouette of the child we had seen in the window. "Help us," it mouthed again, the shadows creeping back toward the figure. I felt a knot form in my stomach, the truth dawning on me. "No, we can't leave them. We have to go," Josh urged, pulling us toward the door. "Wait," I insisted, my heart aching. "They need our help. They're trapped just like we were. We can't help them," Megan cried, fear creeping into her voice. "They'll drag us back." But something deep within me stirred, a sense of responsibility that couldn't be ignored. "We can't abandon them." As the shadows lurked closer, I took a step forward, my heart racing. "I won't let them suffer alone. Megan, Josh, please. Trust me," I called out, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at me. "If we can break the curse, maybe they can find peace too." With that, I stepped closer to the wall, my hands outstretched. The whispers intensified, but instead of retreating, I felt a surge of strength flow through me. "Listen to me," I shouted, projecting my voice into the darkness. "You don't have to be afraid. We're here to help." The shadows paused, and I could feel the tension in the air shift. "Let go of the pain. You don't have to remain trapped." The child's silhouette wavered, and I could see its face now, eyes filled with sorrow, longing for freedom. "Help us," it whispered, its voice a mere echo. "Together, we can break this," I yelled, turning back to Megan and Josh. "Join me. We have to show them the light." They hesitated, fear flickering in their eyes, but I knew we couldn't turn back now. "Please." Taking a deep breath, they joined me, our hands clasping together once more. "For them," Josh murmured, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We faced the shadows, hearts pounding in unison. "We believe in you," I called out, channeling all our energy into the plea. The darkness surged forward, but this time it was met with a wave of light. The shadows writhed, their cries turning from anger to despair as they fought against our force. "Let go. Find your peace," Megan shouted, her voice strong. The child's silhouette flickered, the shadows shrinking back, and I felt a warmth envelop us. "Together," I shouted, pushing forward, the light blinding. The room erupted in brightness, and in a blinding flash, the darkness vanished, leaving behind only a whisper of wind. When the light faded, we found ourselves outside, the night sky clear and bright above us. "What just happened?" Josh whispered, his voice trembling. We did it," I said, breathless, looking around. The shadows were gone, and the air felt lighter. "Where are we?" Megan asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. I smiled, the weight of dread lifting from my chest. "We're free." As we stood there, surrounded by the remnants of the Halloween night, I knew our lives would never be the same. We had faced the darkness together, and emerged stronger. But deep down, I felt a lingering sadness for the lost souls who hadn't found their way. I vowed that I would remember them, carry their stories, and honor their memories. "We need to go home," I said, glancing at my friends. As we walked away from the house, I could feel the warmth of the night wrap around us, a gentle reminder that even in the darkest of places, there was always a flicker of light to guide us home. The streets were eerily quiet, illuminated by the soft glow of the street lamps, their light dancing in the lingering mist. Each step felt surreal, as if we were emerging from a dream that threatened to fade with the dawn. "Megan, what do you remember about what happened?" I asked, hoping to piece together the fragments of that night. She frowned, furrowing her brow in concentration. "I remember running into the house, and then it's all a blur. There were voices, shadows. I felt like I was being pulled in every direction." "Same here," Josh chimed in. "It felt like we were all separated. I thought I'd lost you two forever." The memory sent a chill down my spine, but I forced myself to focus on the positive. "But we found each other again. We faced it together." Megan nodded, her expression softening. "Yeah, we did. And we saved those kids. Do you think they're really free?" I wondered aloud, my heart heavy with the thought. "I want to believe they are," Josh said quietly. "We have to believe it." As we walked, the memories of the house, the laughter, the screams, the shadows, faded into the background, replaced by the warmth of friendship and the knowledge that we had faced our fears. We reached Megan's house, the familiar silhouette of her home standing steadfast against the night sky. "I guess this is it," she said, turning to us. "Are you sure you're okay?" I asked, concern etched on my face. She smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes completely. "Yeah, I will be. Just need to process everything." Josh stepped forward, pulling her into a hug. "We're here for you, okay? Anytime you need to talk." "I know," she whispered, squeezing him tightly. As she released him, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. "We'll get through this. Together. Always," Megan replied, a spark of determination igniting in her voice. "Let's meet up tomorrow," I suggested, needing to ensure we stayed connected. "Definitely," Josh agreed. "We can talk about what happened, figure it out together." "Okay, it's a plan," Megan said, nodding resolutely. After exchanging hugs, we parted ways, and I headed home, my heart still racing from the night's events. The walk felt longer than usual, my mind racing with thoughts of the house, the shadows, and the children we had freed. A sense of purpose began to bloom within me. I had a responsibility to remember their stories, to honor their spirits. When I finally reached my front door, I paused, taking a deep breath before stepping inside. The familiar scent of home wrapped around me, but the weight of what had happened still clung to my thoughts. I locked the door behind me and headed to the kitchen, needing something to ground myself. As I poured a glass of water, I glanced at the clock. 2 a.m. Sleep felt impossible, my mind a swirling chaos of memories and emotions. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, the cool wood beneath my fingers offering a sense of comfort. I grabbed my notebook, the one I had used to document my thoughts and fears in the past few weeks. Flipping it open, I began to write. October 31st, 2023, the night we faced the darkness. I wrote down everything, the laughter, the screams, the overwhelming shadows. I poured my heart onto the page, recounting every detail, every moment. Hours passed as I wrote, the world around me fading away. I lost track of time, consumed by the need to capture everything. the pain and the triumph, the fear and the hope. Finally, I put down my pen, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. I had done something important. I had given voice to the experience, honoring the memories of those trapped in the shadows. With a yawn, I stretched and looked at the clock again. 5 a.m. I knew sleep was calling, but before I could head to bed, my phone buzzed on the table, lighting up the dark. I picked it up, seeing a message from Megan. "Hey, just wanted to check in. You okay?" I smiled at her thoughtfulness and quickly replied, "Yeah, just wrote everything down. I think it helped. Can't wait to talk more later." "You?" Moments later, my phone buzzed again. "I'm okay, just feeling a bit overwhelmed. But I'm glad we're together in this." "Me too. See you soon." As I set my phone down, I felt a sense of warmth spreading through me. Despite the challenges we faced, we had each other. The sun began to rise, casting a golden light through the kitchen window. As I looked out at the dawn breaking, I felt a flicker of hope. Today would be a new day, a chance to move forward and share our story. I was determined to honor the spirits of the children we had saved and ensure their memories lived on. I took one last look outside, the world slowly coming to life, before heading to bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new stories to tell, and together we would face whatever came our way. The shadows would not define us. We would be the light in the darkness. As I closed my eyes, I whispered a silent promise. For those lost, for those found, we will keep fighting. And with that, I drifted into a peaceful sleep, ready to embrace whatever awaited us in the days to come. Weeks passed, and the bond between Megan, Josh, and I grew stronger. Together, we shared our experiences, the laughter, and the shadows, each conversation helping to heal the wounds from that night. We decided to dedicate our time to raising awareness about the importance of mental health, especially for those who face their fears in the darkest of times. We created a support group, welcoming others who had experienced trauma, and offered a safe space for sharing stories and finding strength in one another. In memory of the children we had saved, we organized an event called Light in the Darkness. It was a night filled with stories, laughter, and hope, where people came together to remember those lost and to celebrate the resilience of the human spirit. As I stood there, surrounded by friends and strangers, I felt the warmth of their presence, a reminder that we were never truly alone. We had faced the shadows, and together, we had emerged into the light. And in that moment, I knew our journey was just beginning. As our story comes to a close, I hope you find the courage to face your fears, even if just for a moment. If you can, try to get some sleep tonight, but remember to keep one eye open, because sometimes the darkness hides more than we can see. If you enjoyed this tale and want to hear more spine-chilling stories, make sure to subscribe to the Horror Shack and turn on that notification bell. I'll leave you now with some eerie sounds to drift off to, but don't be surprised if they linger in your mind long after the lights go out. Until next time, stay safe and remember, never let your guard down in the dark.